Your focus determines which version of reality collapses into your lived experience, because the very act of attention is not passive, it is profoundly creative. Every moment you are immersed in a field of infinite potentialities, countless possibilities existing simultaneously like uncollapsed waves waiting for direction. Quantum physics has shown us through the double-slit experiment that particles behave as waves of probability until an observer focuses upon them, at which point they collapse into a measurable, definite outcome. This same principle operates on the level of human experience. Your attention is the observer effect in action, transforming possibility into actuality. What you habitually focus upon is what solidifies, while the countless other options remain unmanifest. This is why two individuals living in the same environment under seemingly identical circumstances can experience completely different lives. One sees limitation and struggle, while the other perceives opportunity and expansion. Their external environment is neutral, but their chosen focus collapses different versions of reality into form. Focus acts like a spotlight in the vast darkness of possibility. Wherever you direct that light, reality crystallizes and takes shape. Your thoughts and emotions serve as the filters through which your awareness engages with the field of potential. A person who wakes up each day scanning for problems, rehearsing regrets, and reaffirming fears is unknowingly reinforcing the same storyline, collapsing the same version of life repeatedly. To them, life appears repetitive and restrictive, not because that is the only possibility, but because that is the version their focus continuously selects. By contrast, when attention is deliberately directed toward gratitude, growth, and the vision of a brighter future, a new pathway becomes activated in the quantum field. This does not mean the environment itself instantly changes, but it does mean that new potentials begin to gain structure and momentum until they eventually materialize. The truth is that your brain and nervous system are constantly engaged in observation. Modern neuroscience confirms that neural pathways strengthen with repetition, which means that each thought and focus point you return to literally rewires your biology to align with that reality. The subconscious mind is particularly powerful in this process because it runs most of your daily patterns automatically. If the subconscious is filled with repeated focus on lack, self-doubt, or fear, it will collapse experiences that confirm those assumptions. But the same mechanism, when trained, can turn into the greatest asset. Consciously focusing on abundance, joy, or capability strengthens neural connections that begin to align your perception with those outcomes. What you look for, you begin to notice more of, and what you notice more of, you energize, and what you energize eventually takes form in your lived life. Focus is not just mental, it is emotional. Your emotions amplify the energy behind your attention, making certain possibilities more magnetically attractive. A thought entertained without emotion is weak and often fleeting, but a thought fused with feeling becomes a potent directive to the quantum field. When you focus on a possibility with both thought and genuine emotion, you imprint a stronger pattern that has far more influence on what collapses into your experience. This is why it is not enough to merely think about a desired future. You must also feel it, embody it, and allow your focus to consistently rest upon it with conviction. Imagine a garden filled with countless seeds. Your focus is the sunlight and water. Whichever seeds you continually direct your light and nourishment toward will inevitably sprout and grow, while others wither in the background. The seeds of limitation and possibility both exist within you at all times. It is not that life denies you abundance or freedom. It is that your attention often waters the seeds of fear, doubt, and scarcity. When you learn to consciously redirect that focus, even in small increments, you begin to nourish the seeds of growth and empowerment, and those potentials gradually become your lived reality. This principle is universal, whether in relationships, health, finances, or personal growth. The experiences you repeatedly collapse into being are reflections of your dominant focus. Focus on conflict, and you collapse more conflict. Focus on love and appreciation, and you collapse more harmony. Focus on lack, and scarcity becomes reinforced. Focus on opportunity, and pathways begin to appear where none were noticed before. The external world is malleable, but it always takes shape according to the lens through which it is observed. When you understand that focus determines the version of reality you live, you realize that circumstances are not fixed but fluid, shifting in response to the direction of your awareness. This is not philosophy but practical mechanics of consciousness interacting with the quantum field. The question is no longer whether possibilities exist, they always do. The question is which one you consistently select through your focus. The observer effect proves consciousness creates reality, not the other way around, because at the core of existence lies a paradox revealed by quantum physics. The universe does not behave as a collection of solid, independent objects until something becomes aware of them. In the famous double-slit experiment, scientists discovered that particles such as electrons behave like waves of probability when unobserved, existing in multiple states at once. Yet, the moment an observer directs attention to the experiment, those particles collapse into a specific, measurable form. This means that observation itself alters the outcome, suggesting that consciousness does not merely register reality but plays an active role in shaping it. If this principle is true at the smallest levels of matter, then it extends upward into the level of human experience, where attention and awareness continually sculpt the world we encounter. Consciousness is not a byproduct of material events, but the initiating force that gives material events their structure. The implication is radical. The physical world is not fixed or absolute, but a fluid field of potential until consciousness interacts with it. This overturns the long-held assumption that reality is objective and independent of the observer. Instead, it shows that the observer and the observed are inseparably linked. What you look at changes based on how you look at it, and who you are as an observer influences what you perceive. This is not a poetic metaphor, but a principle verified repeatedly by experiments in quantum mechanics. At every moment, countless possible realities exist, but only one takes shape as your lived experience, and it is your conscious awareness that collapses the wave of possibilities into form. From this perspective, your thoughts are not invisible or insignificant, but creative acts that participate in shaping reality. When you think about failure, limitation, or fear, your consciousness is collapsing versions of reality where those conditions are more likely to exist. When you think about growth, expansion, and success, your consciousness is collapsing versions of reality aligned with those outcomes. Consciousness functions like a tuning mechanism in a vast quantum field, determining which frequencies of reality are amplified and which remain dormant. This explains why people who habitually dwell on negativity often encounter more negativity, while those who train themselves to focus on opportunity seem to encounter possibilities that others miss. It is not luck or chance, but the mechanics of observation at work. The observer effect also reveals that your inner state matters as much as your outer actions. If you take action from a mindset of fear or scarcity, the reality you collapse will reflect those vibrations, no matter how much effort you put in. But if your actions are aligned with a state of coherence, where thought, emotion, and intention harmonize. You collapse realities that mirror that alignment. Consciousness is the primary cause, and reality is the effect. This reverses the usual belief that external circumstances dictate how you feel or think. In truth, the way you choose to focus and the quality of your consciousness determine the external circumstances that show up. Many ancient spiritual traditions intuited this long before modern science confirmed it. Teachings about the power of belief, the law of attraction, and the creative role of thought all point toward the same truth. Consciousness creates reality. The observer effect is the scientific doorway that connects mysticism with measurable physics. When you understand this, you recognize that you are not powerless or at the mercy of external forces. Instead, you are a participant in the ongoing creation of reality, an observer whose awareness determines what possibilities become tangible. It is important to realize that observation does not mean passive looking. It is an energetic interaction between awareness and possibility. Where you place your attention, how you perceive, and the energy behind your perception all determine how the quantum field responds. To observe with fear is to collapse fearful realities. To observe with faith and gratitude is to collapse empowering ones. Consciousness is therefore the ultimate creative tool, constantly sculpting the world moment by moment, not through physical manipulation first, but through perception and focus. This principle challenges the notion of a solid, predetermined world, and replaces it with a living, dynamic field responsive to the observer. The world you see is not the world as it inherently is, but the world as you collapse it into being. Consciousness precedes form, not the reverse, and understanding this changes everything about how you relate to life. Most people unconsciously observe limitation into existence through repeated focus, because the mind is like a lens that continuously scans, interprets, and magnifies whatever it is trained to notice. Every human being is born into a field of infinite possibilities, yet not everyone experiences abundance, freedom, or creativity, largely because their habitual focus collapses realities that reflect limitation rather than expansion. This process is often unconscious, meaning it happens without deliberate choice, driven by ingrained beliefs, conditioned thinking patterns, and emotional habits established over years of repetition. The subconscious mind stores these patterns and replays them daily, leading people to repeatedly notice the same problems, anticipate the same struggles, and therefore reinforce the same outcome. In essence, reality becomes a mirror of their unconscious observation, not a reflection of objective truth. When someone wakes up in the morning with a mind rehearsing yesterday's challenges, remembering disappointments, or worrying about future obstacles, they are already tuning their awareness toward limitation. That tuning acts like a magnet, attracting experiences, perceptions, and opportunities that align with that focus. If you continually think, "I never have enough money," "things never work out for me," or "I'm not good enough," your consciousness unconsciously collapses versions of reality where those statements feel true. It is not that abundance, success, or love do not exist, but that your focus filters them out of awareness. You become blind to opportunities that do not fit the narrative your mind is rehearsing. This unconscious observation operates much like a feedback loop. Your thoughts create feelings, your feelings reinforce perceptions, and your perceptions confirm your beliefs, which then generate more of the same thoughts. If you believe life is hard, you feel stress and frustration, which primes your mind to notice difficulties, which then proves to you that life is hard. The cycle continues until it feels unquestionable. Yet this loop is not reality itself, but a chosen version of it, unconsciously selected over and over again. The quantum field holds other potentials: ease, joy, opportunity. But they remain dormant because your attention does not energize them. Cultural conditioning plays a major role in this unconscious observation of limitation. From childhood, many people are taught to focus on what is lacking, what is dangerous, or what is not yet good enough. Parents, teachers, and media often reinforce scarcity-based narratives such as money doesn't grow on trees, be realistic, or life is a struggle. These statements, repeated over years, become embedded in the subconscious mind. As adults, people continue to observe reality through the lens of limitation, not because it is inherently true, but because it has been rehearsed into habit. What is repeated becomes familiar, and what is familiar becomes automatic, guiding perception and collapsing the same restricted outcomes into experience. Fear and worry are also powerful drivers of unconscious observation. When the mind is gripped by fear, it narrows focus onto threats and potential losses. This hyper-vigilance may have once served as a survival mechanism, but in the modern world it often traps people in cycles of scarcity thinking. A person who constantly worries about losing their job may unconsciously notice every small sign of instability, interpret neutral events as negative, and eventually behave in ways that make loss more likely. Similarly, someone who worries about being abandoned in relationships may unconsciously collapse experiences of distance, mistrust, or rejection, not because they are inevitable, but because their focus keeps energizing that version of reality. The unconscious observation of limitation can even manifest physically. The brain's reticular activating system, which filters information from the environment, prioritizes what aligns with your dominant focus. If you are convinced opportunities are scarce, your brain literally filters out evidence of abundance, showing you only what matches the belief of lack. What you fail to see might be the very chance that could change your life, but because your unconscious focus is tuned to limitation, you pass it by unnoticed. This is not a failure of the external world, but a consequence of inner attention shaping perception. Yet, even though most people unconsciously observe limitation into existence, the same mechanism holds the power for liberation. The unconscious can be retrained by shifting focus deliberately and repeatedly onto possibility, gratitude, and empowerment until those patterns replace the old ones. What was once unconscious limitation can be transformed into unconscious expansion, but the first step is recognizing that repeated focus is not neutral. It is creative, constantly collapsing reality into form. Quantum coherence between thought and emotion is the key to manifestation because it unites the two most powerful forces within the human system into a single vibrational signal that resonates with the field of infinite possibility. Thought alone is not enough because many people think positive ideas while simultaneously feeling doubt, fear, or lack. Emotion alone is not enough either because raw feeling without direction tends to dissipate without shaping reality in a meaningful way. It is only when thought and emotion come into alignment that they generate coherence, a state where the energy of the mind and the energy of the heart amplify each other, sending a clear, consistent signal into the quantum field. In this state, intention gains power, focus gains clarity, and manifestation becomes a natural extension of inner harmony. When the mind thinks one thing and the heart feels another, the signal broadcast into the field is fragmented. For example, if someone repeats affirmations about abundance, but feels scarcity and anxiety underneath, the signal is incoherent. The quantum field responds to the stronger vibration, and emotion often carries more weight than thought alone. This is why many people fail to manifest what they say they want. Their conscious mind desires it, but their emotional body broadcasts the opposite. Coherence eliminates this conflict. By cultivating thoughts that align with empowering emotions, you collapse realities that reflect both mental clarity and emotional certainty. The field receives one unified message rather than competing ones, making manifestation precise and effective. Scientific studies on the heart's electromagnetic field support this principle. The heart generates a field far more powerful than that of the brain, and this field interacts with the environment in measurable ways. When thoughts of gratitude, love, or appreciation are sustained, the heart rhythm becomes ordered and harmonious, a state known as heart coherence. When the brain aligns with this state through intentional thought, the entire system synchronizes, producing measurable physiological benefits such as reduced stress and enhanced resilience. More importantly, this state of coherence sends a signal into the field that reflects order, harmony, and possibility. The quantum field responds to coherence because it is stability within chaos, clarity within uncertainty. It acts like a tuning fork, drawing experiences and realities that resonate with the same frequency. This explains why visualization practices are so powerful when paired with elevated emotion. Simply imagining a desired future without emotion leaves the vision flat and mechanical. But when you imagine that future with the felt experience of joy, gratitude, or love, the image is charged with energy that the field can respond to. Emotion energizes thought, and thought directs emotion, creating coherence that makes the imagined future feel real to the body. The subconscious mind, unable to distinguish between vividly imagined experiences and actual experiences, accepts this coherence as reality and begins to organize behavior, perception, and focus. Around it, the quantum field, responding to this unified signal, collapses opportunities and circumstances that align with the vibration of that state. Coherence also requires releasing contradictory states that dilute the signal. Doubt, fear, and resistance create interference patterns that weaken the broadcast. If you think about success but feel unworthy of it, the incoherence blocks manifestation. This is why inner healing and self-awareness are so crucial. Unresolved emotions create conflicting vibrations that sabotage the clarity of intention. By bringing unconscious feelings into awareness, processing them, and replacing them with elevated states, you refine the signal until it becomes consistent and strong. The more coherent the signal, the faster and more precisely manifestation occurs, because the field receives a message without distortion. The beauty of coherence is that it is accessible to everyone. It does not require force or struggle, but rather alignment. Practices like meditation, breathwork, gratitude journaling, and heart-focused breathing all help synchronize thought and emotion. Over time, coherence becomes a natural state rather than an effort, and manifestation shifts from something rare or miraculous to something expected and repeatable. Life begins to mirror the inner state with precision, not because of luck or coincidence, but because the quantum field reflects coherence back into form. Incoherence creates confusion and randomness. Coherence creates clarity and order. The key lies in cultivating a state where what you think and what you feel are not at odds but unified in a single, powerful intention that vibrates as truth within your entire being. Your unconscious observation patterns shape 90% of your reality because the majority of human thought and perception operates beneath the surface of conscious awareness, guiding behavior, filtering experiences, and collapsing possibilities into consistent outcomes without deliberate choice. Every day, Countless impressions flow through the mind, yet only a small fraction are consciously noticed. The rest are handled by the subconscious, which acts like an automatic pilot, making decisions, interpreting events, and drawing conclusions based on ingrained patterns formed through repetition. These unconscious patterns serve as the hidden architects of life, creating a reality that feels natural, inevitable, or even predetermined, when in truth it is the product of focus repeated so often that it has become automatic. The subconscious does not evaluate reality objectively. It follows programming. From early childhood, people absorb beliefs from parents, teachers, culture, and society. If those influences emphasize scarcity, struggle, or limitation, the subconscious builds filters that interpret reality through that lens. These filters then determine what is noticed and what is ignored. For instance, two people can walk into the same room and one will notice opportunities while the other notices obstacles. Not because the room is inherently one or the other, but because their unconscious observation patterns are tuned differently. This tuning decides which version of reality each person collapses, and because 90% of perception is unconscious, most of life unfolds according to these unseen patterns rather than deliberate choice. The brain itself is wired to conserve energy by automating repeated processes. Thoughts, emotions, and reactions rehearsed enough times become neural pathways that fire automatically. This is why habits feel effortless once they are established. Unfortunately, the same mechanism that creates helpful habits also reinforces disempowering ones. A person who unconsciously expects rejection will interpret neutral interactions as dismissive, reinforcing the belief of unworthiness. A person who unconsciously expects failure will notice every small setback and overlook progress, reinforcing the belief that success is out of reach. Over time, these unconscious patterns become self-fulfilling prophecies, shaping external experiences to mirror internal assumptions. What makes unconscious observation patterns so powerful is their ability to determine what information enters conscious awareness. The reticular activating system in the brain filters the vast stream of sensory data and prioritizes whatever aligns with dominant beliefs and expectations. If your unconscious pattern says, "I never get opportunities," your mind filters out evidence of potential openings and highlights situations that confirm lack. The world seems to comply with your belief not because that is all that exists, but because your unconscious filter is shaping what you are capable of seeing. In this way, 90% of your reality is not reality itself, but your unconscious interpretation of it. Emotional patterns play a key role as well. If the unconscious is conditioned to expect stress or fear, the body becomes addicted to those emotional states. It then unconsciously seeks out situations that replicate them, not because it wants pain, but because familiarity feels safe. This cycle ensures that most people live out the same emotional experiences year after year, even when consciously they desire change. The unconscious seeks to maintain coherence with what it knows, even if what it knows is limitation. Thus, people often sabotage opportunities or overlook abundance because their unconscious patterns are aligned with struggle rather than expansion. The influence of unconscious patterns can be seen clearly in generational cycles. Families often repeat financial struggles, relationship difficulties, or health issues across generations, not solely because of genetics or circumstances, but because observation patterns are passed down through words, attitudes, and behavior. A child who grows up hearing constant worry about money unconsciously adopts scarcity as a lens, shaping their adult reality in the same way. Without awareness, the cycle continues, as unconscious observation keeps collapsing the same limited outcomes across time. Yet the fact that unconscious patterns shape 90% of reality also reveals immense potential. By bringing these patterns into awareness and deliberately retraining them, the architecture of reality itself can shift. When new thoughts and emotions are rehearsed with consistency, the subconscious adopts them as its new baseline. Over time, unconscious observation begins to align with possibility rather than limitation. Life then feels different not because the external world has fundamentally changed, but because the 90% that once filtered for struggle now filters for opportunity, abundance, and alignment. The unconscious becomes an ally rather than an obstacle, shaping reality in ways that serve expansion rather than restriction. You are not a passive witness but the conscious director of infinite quantum possibilities, because the universe does not operate as a rigid structure where outcomes are predetermined, but as a dynamic field of probabilities waiting for observation to bring them into form. The very act of awareness functions as the catalyst that collapses the wave of potential into concrete experience, which means you are never simply drifting through life, while forces outside your control decide your fate. Instead, you are the one choosing consciously or unconsciously what becomes real in your world. This realization shifts you from the role of victim to that of creator, because every choice, every focus of attention, and every emotional state sends a directive into the field, shaping which possibility among infinite ones solidifies into your present. When you consider that infinite versions of reality exist simultaneously, it becomes clear that your focus acts as the steering mechanism. Much like a film director selects which scene to shoot, you select which reality to live by what you consistently give your attention to. If your focus remains fixed on limitation, fear, or doubt, the reality that takes shape mirrors those qualities. If instead you consistently focus on possibility, love, and expansion, you collapse a very different version of reality, one filled with circumstances that reflect those higher states. Most people drift because they are unaware of this process, allowing unconscious patterns and external influences to direct the film of their life. But when you step into conscious awareness, you reclaim the role of director, choosing deliberately how the story unfolds. Every thought is like a script note, every emotion like a tone that colors the scene, every belief like a guiding theme. The quantum field does not resist or question the signal. It simply reflects it. This is why some people seem to live lives of synchronicity, ease, and opportunity, while others repeat cycles of hardship. The difference is not luck or destiny, but awareness of the directing role. Those who understand that their consciousness determines which possibilities manifest begin to use their focus intentionally, while those who remain unaware continue to collapse realities by default. Conscious direction is not about controlling every detail of life, but about establishing the vibrational framework within which experiences unfold. The role of director also involves imagination, because imagination is the tool by which new realities are rehearsed before they manifest. When you visualize with clarity and feel with conviction, you are essentially rehearsing a future scene. The subconscious mind accepts this rehearsal as real, aligning thoughts, behaviors, and perceptions to bring it into form. The quantum field, responding to this coherent directive, aligns circumstances and opportunities to match. You are not waiting for life to deliver a script. You are writing it moment by moment, whether consciously or unconsciously. Understanding this grants freedom, because it means the future is not fixed but flexible, subject to the direction you give. The responsibility that comes with this awareness is profound. As a director, you cannot blame randomness or fate for the scenes that play out, because they are reflections of your internal directive. This does not mean you should judge yourself harshly for undesired outcomes, but rather recognize that you hold the creative authority to shift them. Each moment is a new opportunity to redirect the lens, to choose a new scene, to collapse a different set of possibilities. Even deeply ingrained patterns can be reshaped through repeated conscious focus, just as a director can reshoot a scene until it captures the intended vision. Energy follows attention, and attention is the director's spotlight. Whatever you illuminate with consistent thought and emotion becomes the star of your reality. The background fades, and the chosen scene comes to life. Most people scatter their spotlight across conflicting desires, worries, and distractions, creating a fragmented film with no clear direction. But when you hold the spotlight steady on a chosen vision, the field responds with clarity. Opportunities, people, and synchronicities appear not because they suddenly emerged, but because your focused direction brought them into awareness and coherence. Ultimately, stepping into the role of conscious director transforms how you experience life itself. Instead of reacting to circumstances, you recognize that circumstances are the result of prior direction. Instead of feeling powerless, you realize that power has always been within your focus and intention. Instead of drifting as a passive observer, you actively sculpt the film of your existence, scene by scene, choice by choice. The infinite possibilities of the quantum field are not abstract concepts, but raw material waiting for your conscious direction to give them form. All of these keynotes lead to a single truth. Reality is not fixed, but fluid, shaped by the quality of your attention and the patterns you allow to dominate your mind. Whether through unconscious habits or deliberate focus, you are continuously influencing which version of possibility becomes solid. The science of quantum observation and the art of conscious awareness come together to reveal that you are far more powerful than you may have believed. When thought, feeling, and intention are aligned, the field responds with precision. When patterns are left unchecked, they repeat limitation. The choice is always yours, and it begins in the present moment, because every thought now is the blueprint of what will be experienced next.